The NFL Combine kicking off this week. TD, Teron Davenport, will join us at 1 p.m. What he wants to see from the Combine, and really overall, like, what can you take away from the Combine? The NFL Combine is such an interesting... Its evolution has been so interesting. We talked to Jeff Fisher last week, D-Mase, and I asked him, what can you really take away from the Combine? And he said, well, let's go back to the reason why the NFL Combine even was created. It was so you could get all of these players in one place, see them side by side, medical reasons, have your doctors check them out, get your own measurements. Now it's a made-for-TV event where players run around in their underwear. So we'll get into that conversation with TD, but first, D-Mase, I want to start on some draft talk. Because the way that I view it, and tell me if you view it any differently, the way that I view the Titans in the draft is they have so many different options. That they can really afford, the Tennessee Titans at number 7, they can afford to let the draft come to them.
Yeah.
That you let the board fall how it does. You let teams above you make the difficult decisions. The New England Patriots, for example. If Jaden Daniels and Marvin Harrison Jr. are both there at 3, which I would assume that they both are, what do you do? Like, is New England married to a quarterback at 3? Do they take a receiver? Do they continue to build around Mac Jones? I would assume that they probably take a quarterback, but again, I don't know. So I think that the Titans are sitting in a position where they can let picks 1 through 6 kind of do what they do and let the best players fall to them at a position of need, because as we've talked ad nauseum, every position is a position of need, except starting quarterback.
Yeah, they have every position. They need someone at that position this upcoming season. Whether it needs to be a starter or just some depth at that position. We've talked ad nauseum about the offensive line. If the guy that they want at the tackle position, say if Alt's not there, then do they go to the next available tackle, or do they go to another position and need? Wide receiver, linebacker, secondary, positions that are critical in what you're trying to do or what the new NFL is about. You got to have linebackers that can not only be, quarterbacks of your team and that could tackle, but you got to have linebackers that can cover as well. You got to have corners that can cover, not just zone coverage. They got to be man-to-man corners as well, because of the way the NFL is going. And they have to get involved in the run game. They got to come up and make tackles. So if it's not the tackle position, it's receiver position, the inside backer, the cornerback, the safety. Hell, like you said, just because they missed on one position doesn't mean that, they don't have another position that they can fill or should fill.
It doesn't mean that there's another damn good player at another position that could be
Absolutely.
waiting for you at 7, because if you look at it, you say if Joe Alt is gone. Well, if Joe Alt gets taken in the top 6, that pushes another receiver down to 7. Let's say the Chargers take Joe Alt at 5. Well, that pushes even more good players down. D-Mase, I'll ask you, is there anything within reason that you would be against the Titans doing? And I say within reason, like you're not going to take a punter at 7. You're not going to take probably an inside linebacker. There's not a running back in this year's draft to take at 7. So something within reason that the Titans could do at 7 or in the first round of the draft that you would be against.
Oh, boy. I mean, they need help across the board at offensive line. But I think if they get their left tackle, they will be all right. So if that guy's not there, and if they get an interior guy, a guard, or which I don't think they will get, guard or center, I think that would sort of be head scratching if they get another interior lineman.
That would be not head scratching, moronic.
Yeah, it would be. I can't
You don't
really
need a guard in the first round.
Yeah, I can't really, outside of something like that, I can't really say that, okay, there would be a move that I would disagree with, unless you're talking about moving up in the draft. Then I'm like, nah, because you need more picks than you need that player. And do you feel that, okay, giving up whatever you need to give up, are you giving it up to, say, you get a tip that someone's trying to move up to get alt, so you want to move up? Okay, I can understand that, but within reason. Like, I'm not giving up the farm to move up 2 spots just to get my left tackle, which you believe will be your left tackle for the next 10 years. But that may be too much of a price to pay to move up that far to get the guy that you necessarily want. I think you just at that point, you let the board fall to you. And if someone does take alt, and say if a Dunze or Neighbors is there, but you have somebody else rated higher than those guys, then possibly move down and acquire picks. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I don't think there's any move outside of saying, oh, we're going to go get another interior lineman. No, not really. Or a defensive tackle. You don't. Exactly. You don't need those. Those are not, they would be nice to have, but those are not guys that you just desperately need. You desperately need left tackle. You desperately need a quarterback. I don't even think they desperately need a receiver. I don't. I think they desperately need somebody. No, I think they desperately need somebody that can cover some receivers, and they desperately need someone that can block these ends that are in today's football.
If you don't think they need a receiver, who is?
I don't think they desperately need a like we just, oh my goodness, we got to get a receiver in the first round. No, I don't think because I think they will be able to get a receiver in the second round, possibly, if that's the route they choose to go. But I'm not going to reach for one of these receivers not named Marvin Harrison or, a guy like that. To me, I think he's the best receiver in this class. So if it's not him, then I'm not reaching, even though I think Neighbors and Adunze is good, I'm not reaching for those guys.
I would rather those two would be a reach at 7?
I don't see it as a pressing need. That's just me. I don't see receiver as a pressing, like, we gotta get a receiver. They need a receiver, but not necessarily in the first round. They can get a receiver in the second round. They don't have a third round pick. Maybe they can move down in the draft. If they believe that they have someone, because we don't know how their board looks, and everybody's board is a little bit different.
And we don't know how the first 6 are going
just
to go.
Because McShay and all these guys come out with this, this is how we rank the guys, no matter what position, doesn't mean the Titans have them ranked that way. The Titans could have a DB ranked higher than 2 of the receivers. So to me, if that is indeed the case, which I don't know, if that is indeed the case, say if you have Marvin Harrison or Neighbors ranked high and they go, but you have a Dunze ranked high too, but he's not rated higher than your cornerback, then I'm not then reaching for Neighbors. I mean, a Dunze. I'm not going back. I am going to allow the board to play it out. If I need to move down in the draft because I know that corner will still be there, then I'm getting it. Because to me, we need one, but it's not a desperate need like we need a tackle or like we need a corner. They need cornerbacks. I don't know. I think people are missing this because we concentrate so much on the offense, and rightfully so, because that's the way the league is going. But the Titans desperately need a defensive back. They had one of the worst defensive secondaries in the National Football League. Hopefully Denard Wilson can help that, but they need a cornerback. They need him. And for us to not shine a light on that position, I think and I've done it. I've looked at it and said, well, the receiver is the pressing need. But as I started to think about it more and more, I'm thinking, no, because they can sort of supplement that without having to draft a receiver they can get him in the second round. They can get a receiver through free agency. But what they do need is a tackle and a corner. They need that because they have neither one. They have no corners. No corners on the roster. Fulton is a free agent. Sean Bunning is a free agent. They have no other than other than McQuarrie. And I think McQuarrie is a good player, but he's not
your shutdown.
Yeah, he's not your shutdown corner.
Yeah.
So they need two positions they desperately need in today's football. They need a tackle and they need a corner. That's what I feel they need. I'm not saying that they don't need a receiver, but I don't rank the receiver higher than those two guys.
I'm going to say that the Titans desperately need a receiver because I think Will Levis desperately needs some help, and you desperately need to figure out if he's your quarterback or not. Like, it's getting to put up or shut up time that you need to figure out what Will Levis is, because remember, you have him on a 4-year deal. You don't get that 5th-year option. Yeah. And if he's not your guy, you need to hurry up and find that guy who is going to be your guy, and you need to figure out the path to get that guy. So I think, to be fair, you have to put pieces around the quarterback before you make up your mind about, is he the guy or not? Is he our future or not? That's the number one question that I think is hovering over this Tennessee Titans team. So I'm going to say they desperately need a receiver, because outside of D-Hop, I don't know what they have.
But they can supplement that via free agency. There are enough free agent wide receivers that are going to be on the market. Now, some, as we saw, T. Higgins got tagged already. There are some that's going to more than likely sign back with their team. But there are a few guys that possibly want to move to another destination.
And the idea of the draft and how we can rank the Titans' needs in terms of desperation, that will change once we get into free agency. Because the Titans, at least the way that I view it, with the Titans' need for a receiver, it may go down on my list just based off of what the Titans do in free agency, and that's why I say they need to spend in free agency, because there are far too many needs in this draft, desperate needs in this draft, or desperate needs in this offseason as a whole, to only address it in the draft. So if you go out in free agency, and I'm going to say this name even though I really don't think that he's going to be available, because I think that Tampa Bay is going to re-sign him, but let's say you go out and you sign Mike Evans, then my view of the receiver position will be different. Am I anti-receiver at 7? Heck no. Because I'm under the belief that you can never have too many good receivers, especially since you would then have D-Hop and Mike Evans, two aging receivers that, let's be frank, they don't have 10 years left in the tank. And so I'm not anti anything right now, other than I would be against getting a corner if Joe Alt is there. Honestly, frankly, I think at this point, I'm against any position if Joe Alt is there. If Joe Alt is as pro-ready as TD has said he is, as so many draft evaluators have said that he is, you take that kid if he's there. Now, I know I've been saying Fashanu, and that's not correct.
It's not Fashanu?
Fashanu, I think is how you say it.
I'll get on that as soon as possible.
We're going to call him Fashanu for now.
The Penn State kid, and the Ola Fashanu. We'll work on it. We got time. We got 2 months to figure it out. Yeah. If he's there, is he, your left tackle of the future? That I do not know, but everything that I have heard is that Joe Alt is that dude, and Joe Alt is your left tackle and starting left tackle right now. You take him. Yeah. So I really, I can rationalize any position at number 7. I cannot rationalize trading up. I'm against that. I'm good. There's too many good players in this draft that could fall to you at 7.
And you don't need a quarterback, so there's no reason for you to move up.
Do you need a left tackle? Yeah, sure, you do. But I don't think that there is one left tackle that you need to trade up for. But D-Mase, I got TD on the brain. D-Mase, there is one thing that I am growing increasingly against, and that's trading back to a certain extent. If you have a trade partner, let's see, let me pull up the NFL draft order. If you have a trade partner with, let's say, the Falcons at 8.
How far? Okay. So 10 is your mark of demarcation. It's like, I'm not going below this.
If it's 10, it's not much further back than that. That would I would be vehemently against, because I totally understand the idea of trading back. And of course, all of this is couched with how the board falls, how you rank these positions. But I understand the idea of trading back if, say, maybe Jaden Daniels falls. And then there's a quarterback needy team that's going to pick up the phone and be more desperate to trade up. And then you pick up more picks. Because, yes, the Titans need more picks in this draft. The Titans just need more picks in general because you don't have enough good players. You need picks. But you also need good players. And the more that I've listened to draft gurus and former general managers, the more and more that I've read about this draft, it's that there might not be game-changing players outside of a certain point. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show podcast, and it was Dane Brugler, and they were kind of breaking down what this draft looks like at the top in the second half of the draft. This is what they had to say about this upcoming draft.
We've been talking about this draft since August, how it's going to be a top-heavy draft. This is the year to be drafting in the top 10. So even though we are talking about teams possibly trading back, you don't want to move back too far. You want to try and stay as close to the top 10, if not in the top 10 as you can, because you want to get one of these blue chippers. You want to get one of these guys that are true difference-making or project as difference-making talents. And so, we mentioned with the Chargers wanting to move back. If the Cardinals want to move back, the fact that you're trading back just 2 or 3 spots instead of 5 or 6, that matters when you're talking about the top 10, and especially this top 10.
Yeah, you say, okay, yeah, it's only a day 2 pick, quote unquote, only a day 2 pick. All right, they're getting up that, but we got, the drop off at the receiver position's there. But it's a great point. This is a top heavy draft compared to maybe even recent years where we had some really good role kind of player draft. Like that 20 to 40 spot was kind of the sweet spot. This is the opposite. This is just like loaded. Premium spots too.
Okay, again, that was on the Athletic Football Show podcast. They said, look, this top 10 is loaded. That if you can afford to go back 2 or 3 spots, and if you feel like you can still get a quality player there, you probably can in the top 10. But trading back 5, 6 plus spots, there's no guarantee. I was reading Albert Breer's breakdown of the 2024 NFL draft on SI.com this morning. An anonymous GM said this top 10 is absolutely loaded. So, of course, if you get an offer that comes across from a quarterback-needy team, whether that's Minnesota at 11 or Atlanta at 8, and you can still kind of trade back into a spot where you think that there's going to be a quality player there, assuming that those quarterback-needy teams are trading up in order to take a quarterback, and they send you an offer that you simply cannot refuse, then yeah, of course you take it. But I'm not trading back to 18. Like, I'm not trading back to 20. I'm not even trading back to probably anywhere past 15 or 16. Just because if the top 10 is as loaded as all of these draft gurus are saying, the top 10, the top 12 is as loaded as they're saying, I think that player that you can get in the top 10 or top 12 is far more valuable than the picks plus the player that you could get later in the draft. Now, again, that is all with an asterisk. We don't know how the first round is going to look. You never know if you're going to get a haul in return that it's like, look, like, we have to take this. This is an offer that I cannot refuse. So I'm not saying absolutely not to anything as far as this draft is concerned, but trading far back is becoming more and more something that I would have to have an offer that blows me away in order to do it.
It does. It seems as if listening to them, and let's be, because this is funny, because right now we haven't seen these individuals play since early February, late January. Early January. The last playoff game. The national championship was what? First week of January, somewhere around there, second week?
Mid-January.
So we haven't seen any of these players do anything, and I mean anything since then. So the funny part about this is that, okay, we say, well, we can't go past 10 or we can't go past 12, but I guarantee you, once the combine starts and these guys start running, everything's going to shift.
Changes.
Everything's going to shift. Now, getting outside the top, I'm in agreement with you. Getting outside the top 15, it's almost like now you're drafting in the second round, in a sense.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it feels like you're drafting in the second round. So
if you're in the top 15 or even top 12, it should be that you are getting a game-changing player right now.
Exactly.
Like,
based upon what they're
kind of
based upon what everyone is saying, anything, it's like there's a drop-off. So anything past that 12 or 15, it seems like, okay, this is second-round talent. So if you need an impact player, not to say that they can't be wrong, because, hell, they are wrong every damn year.
We know that well.
Exactly. Not saying that they can't get an impact player outside of 12 or 15, but the way it sits now, that if you're trading outside of that, then the odds of you getting a high impact player that can play for you immediately starts to dwindle.
Yeah.
And to me, the Titans have too many needs to, unless somebody just want to give you something silly and say, hey, listen, we will switch spots with you. We'll give you this, this, and this. And then it's like, okay, that's a no-brainer. I have to.
You're giving me 2 firsts.
Exactly. I have to.
Okay.
Yeah. But if it's not that, then no, I'm staying where I'm at. Thank you, but no thank you. Because anything outside of this number, this is the line of demarcation. We feel that, hell, we might as well just go into the second round. We want to be able to get a high-impact player that we believe that can start for us immediately. And listen, it's going to change. Once the combine come around and all of these individual workouts and interviews and all this other stuff being leaked and all this other crazy stuff, guys are going to fall, guys are going to rise.
We know what draft season looks like.
Absolutely. So it may lengthen out how far down you can actually go. Right now, we're just basing it on what we've seen throughout the season, who is projected to be where, when, who's projected to take them. But as the combine start to come around and then the workouts and everything else, we will start to see either it starts to dwindle, like you can't get outside that top 8 or top 7, or it will increase. Okay, you can get outside that top 15, maybe 18, and still get a high impact player.
And when it comes to draft time, beware of speaking in absolutes.
Yeah.
Of saying we absolutely positively are not going to trade back past 12 or 15 because you never know what draft day is going to look like and you never know what offers are going to come across. Like Jared texted me, he said Minnesota offers you 11, a 2025 first, and a third for 7 to take J.J. McCarthy. You're going to turn that down? No, I'm not going to turn that down.
But that's something that, hey, I got to take it because look at what you're giving me.
And if I'm only going to 11
yeah,
and assuming that Minnesota is trading up to 7 to take a quarterback, well, that pushes one of those other skill players or linemen down to you at 11. So never speak in absolutes. But based off of everything that I have read, getting too far outside of that top 10 is getting you further and further away from some of this loaded talent. You're in a good position right now that you can let things come to you. But going too far back, you need picks, but you need good players too.
Yeah.
You need impact players. Titans don't have enough of them. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get into your thoughts on this. Plus, coming up next, as we're talking about trading and moving and trade packages that could come across Rand Carthon's table on draft day or draft days, do we need to start taking a different perspective and looking at the later rounds a little bit differently? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Talk Loan Pronto. They've got the ways that they can help you wipe out credit card debt or get in a general better position financially. Right now, Loan Pronto has a cash out refinance rate of about 5.49%. That's a huge drop. So you can refinance right now, get cash out of your home's equity, wipe out all the credit cards and high interest loans, save hundreds of dollars every month with lower payments. So there's 2 ways of doing it. If you've got the good primary mortgage, keep that intact and go with the Express Equity line of credit. You get the cash you need to address those bills, and you keep that primary mortgage locked in. If your mortgage rate right now is higher, then you can do the refi now and get a better rate and save those hundreds of dollars every month. In fact, if you go that route, you can call today and skip your next 2 mortgage payments. So that is another reason to call Loan Pronto right now. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780. Or go to loanpronto.com. That's loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, 5.49%, has 6.39% APR. Subject to lender approval.
with this draft, the first through fourth rounds, that's really where the money is. Whereas fifth round and down, because of the NIL, and this is something we discussed coming straight out of the Senior Bowl, a lot of those juniors that would normally be out and fill in that back end of the draft, they're going back because they could get that money from NIL, and now that weakens the class, like the bottom half of the bottom part of the draft.
So if somebody was, for this particular draft, trying to make a trade with you with the 7th overall pick, and they were trying to make the numbers work out, and they say, okay, we'll add this in here with the 6th round pick, you would be more hesitant than in years past to say, okay, let's, a first, a third, a 6th, because the 6th round this year is not as good as the 6th round traditionally is.
Right. I would look for a higher pick. If I'm moving picks, I try to stay, or acquiring picks rather, I try to stay upwards of the 5th round.
That was TD, Teron Davenport on the TD Power Hour on Stillman and Company yesterday. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase were broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. I thought that was fascinating, D-Mase. TD said that, look, day 3, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, beware of some of the talent this year compared to maybe some years past because of NIL. That there are significantly more players deciding to stay in college because, you can make money versus in the past where you would say, okay, do I want to come back for another year, risk getting an injury? I could come back another year and improve my draft stock, but I can go into the NFL draft and start making money right now. Well, now you don't have that same conundrum because you're making money in college. So there's less of an incentive for some of these later round players that aren't a guarantee or a lock to go in the first, second, or third rounds. They might look at it and say, hey, look, the amount of money, my contract, what it would look like in the NFL, that's pretty darn similar to what I'm making in college. So I'm just going to stay in college and hope that I can improve my draft stock for another year. And I didn't know necessarily, it made total and complete sense. I didn't know how to quantify that because I said, in theory, that totally makes sense. Maybe one of those unintended consequences of NIL and of some of these changes in college football. But I saw this breakdown. This is on SI.com. Albert Breer's breakdown and preview of the NFL draft coming up in April. This is coming from Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl. And, of course, nobody knows draft prospects better than Jim Nagy does. He explained it. And he said this year, only 58 underclassmen declared for the draft. That was the smallest number since 2011 and nearly 100 fewer than the 144 that declared for the 19 draft. That's shocking.
No, not necessarily, because we got to understand what period we're in. We are we are on the edge of the pandemic period. So you had a bunch of these guys that stuck around. That was in college 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years. You starting to see more of those guys now. That the last couple of years, that wave has been coming out for the draft, whether it be the NBA, all drafts. That wave has been coming out, and I think some of the younger players in all sports, unless they feel they are a first round or possibly a second round pick, they're choosing to stay because they're extra 2 years because of the pandemic. Now all of them are starting to be, that tail end is starting to happen in regards to those guys. So the underclassmen are thinking, okay, if it was just a ordinary draft, if I came out as an underclassman, I probably would be a third round pick, and I would probably came out. Because you never know what's going to happen in the draft.
Right.
But now, because of that influx of, still dealing with the COVID players, I believe, and I could be completely wrong on this, but now they're choosing because it's pushing them down further, and they're saying, well, I can just go back another year, hone on my skills, and make a little change. It's not even that they're making, because there are only a handful of them that are making NFL type like rookie money. But the rest of them are just making good change, like enough to eat, to buy some clothes, to pay for their rent, to have a good time. But it's nothing that they can live on as adults, forever. There are a handful that are and may choose to come back, but I think the majority of them are just getting extra money that and then they like the college life. They like playing for their university. They like what comes with that. And then they want to, raise their draft stock. So I think that's a factor why you're starting to see so less of these underclassmen coming out than you had seen in previous years.
Yeah.
Because now they're saying, okay, maybe I need to wait because this influx of guys that have spent, 4, 5, 6 years in college, they're coming out. Maybe they're a little bit ready. Exactly. They're a little bit more, professional ready. So that may push me down. If I'm not a bona fide first or second round, they may push me out of the third round or push me out of the fourth round. And the further and further you get away from the first round and the second round, like TD said, guys are thinking now. And I think some of it has to do with NIL. But again, I go back to these guys are not breaking the bank. We only talk about the 15 or 20 that are.
Yeah.
We ain't talking about the 1,500 that aren't. They're making enough. They're making a little change, but they're not making the money of a Shador Sanders or, Caleb Williams or Manning that's making
7 figures.
Exactly. But they're not making that.
There are a lot of players in college football, names that might not be household names, names that I know for certain are not household names that are making 6 figures. So I know maybe it's, $150,000 versus what you'd be making, as a 6th round pick, $800,000, $900,000 at close to a league minimum. But it is at least some sort of incentive of, look, I can stick around and I can help out my parents. I can pay for a really nice apartment. I can buy a nice car. I at least have an incentive to stick around in school. And the risk of injury is not as high because I'm still able to cash in. It makes sense to me. It
makes sense. But to me, if I'm one of these guys and, if I'm not getting the is that a 6 figures every year, or is that just 6 figures until I leave? Like, okay, we're gonna pay you, say, $100,000 for the next 4 years. You get however you want to divvy that out. 25, 25, 25. So, okay, do I take that, or do I say, you know what? I'm going to be at worst a 5th round pick. My signing bonus is going to be more than that, and then I get a year in the league. I'm only saying that if you feel you're ready, like from a physical standpoint, you're ready to make that next jump. Now, if you're not ready to make that next jump and you feel that, these other guys are pushing me down, then yeah, you're going to go back and spend another year and make another $25,000. I get that part, but I don't think it's solely based on the NIL deals. I think it's based on how many guys are coming out, when they're coming out, especially this COVID thing. I think we're at the tail end of it now. I think after this year, things start balancing itself out a little bit more in regards to, the eligibility of a lot of these players. So they're looking at all that and they're saying, well, maybe I should stay an extra year. But, there's a pro and a con to that. The pro is you can get better. I understand that. The con is, well, you can get hurt one. But then what if you don't get better? What if you stay status quo and these other guys, and you could have went possibly in the 4th round. Now you go in the 6th round the next following year.
There's a risk involved, of course. There's no risk in declaring. There's a risk in not declaring. I can see from the perspective of NIL, though, of the risk not being as high because you at least know you got some cash
you got some money.
Bank.
Yeah,
you got
I get
some money.
that.
Like Jim Nagy said, I think this thing really drops off on day 3. You're going to get through 4 rounds, and then the 5th through 7th rounds have been completely wiped off the board. I put a tweet out about this a month ago because it happened to our board. All these kids right now with NIL are kind of guinea pigs. And so everything is new. With the NIL effect at the NFL level, I think that now that we're a couple of years in, you're maybe starting to feel the beginnings of it. And that's what I think is interesting. Can we say that the draft is forever changed because of NIL? No, I don't feel like I can say that. over the next 3 to 5 years, if we start to see significant drop-offs from rounds 5 through 7 because players are deciding to stay in college football maybe a year longer than they would have 10 or 15 years ago, then I can say, yeah, we can assume that over the next few years, if it already has been changed the past few years, we can assume that it will be changed over the next few. What we do know, though, just based off of people who study the draft like TD and Jim Nagy, that this year is at least affected. So when we talk trades, when we talk trading back, I think we have to keep that in mind. That a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick this year sounds like it's going to be less impactful than maybe it was in years past. That you're not going to wow me with a 5th, a 6th, or a 7th round pick. That I'm going to need more than that if I'm going to want to trade back in this year's draft or trade a player, whoever it might be. That considered, though, think back to what the Titans traded Kevin Byard for. A 5th and a 7th. We talked about that, how maybe you can use that and package that for a trade in the draft, to trade for players. Well, now not only is that those picks less impactful for the Titans, those are less impactful for everyone else in the National Football League. That those 5th and 7th round picks aren't only less attractive for you, but you packaging those picks into a potential trade package for whatever, whether that's moving into the 3rd round, whether that's trading for a player, whatever it might be. And I got to blow my socks off with that. That's not going to be the game changer. Those 5th and 7th round picks aren't going to be the cherry on top of those deals.
Well, those never, I mean, in my book, those have never been.
But they're viewed differently now.
6th and 7th round picks, those have never been from the standpoint of value, just like pure value.
And now they're much less valuable, at least in this year's draft.
Not scout or anything, just based upon, the numbers. 6th and 7th round picks very seldom stick on your team. Obviously, we have, those that do, but more than likely, when you're picking 6th and 7th, the likelihood of them making it,
it's not high.
It's not high. The likelihood of them making it more than a year is low. But what it does is this to me. There's still value to 6th and 7th round picks. There are. It all depends on how you approach it. And I'm not talking value in regards to, we're going to put together this package for a trade and give it to you and try to sweeten the pot with a 6th and 7th. No. Because it's not, based upon what we're hearing, it's not going to sweeten the pot any. But
not this year.
Yeah, but what it does is it forces your scouts to scout. It forces your GM to GM. Rand Carthon, that's one of the things that Amy, I believe, liked about your personality, about the way you approach it, is that you can find the diamonds in the rough. You can find those 6th and 7th, those late round picks. Those are valuable if you approach it that way. And I believe the Titans and Rand will approach it that way. And I think there are a lot of teams that approach the 7th round, 6th, and anything past the 5th round, let's say that. 5th on. They approach it as value pick from the standpoint of we can find that diamond in the rough. If we scout well enough, if we believe in our scouting department, we can, other teams may approach it as, oh, hell, we got to pick in the 7th. Or what we're going to approach it as, we can find that guy. We can get that guy that can be a game changer for us. He may not be a game changer this season for us, but he can be ultimately moving down the line because it's a development phase. If I'm drafting somebody in the 6th and the 7th round, I'm not expecting them to come in and be a day one player for me.
Of course not. No.
But what I'm expecting is for our coaches, if I scout him and say it's worth drafting him, I expect our coaches to then coach him up so the progression can be something that we can see, that he ultimately becomes a player for us in the near future.
And I'm with you. That if you can find a Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Of course you
and there's been a lot of other guys that have gotten drafted in the 5th and 6th, 7th round that turned out to be good players.
Totally. 100%. But at least what some draft gurus are warning us of this season, those players might not be there.
Yeah, you're right.
And if there is, great. Because, of course, I think that some scouts and some GMs might find something and say, hey, we absolutely can work with this. And then the right coaching and the right situation, they could turn out to be a pretty solid player. Of course, that's going to be the story every single year. But at least looking at this group, maybe the 5th through 7th rounds should be looked at even with it an even bigger grain of salt. Because in the past, it's always been, hey, if you can hit in the 5th or 6th or 7th round, then great. But we're not going to expect you to come in here and be an all-pro by year 1 or 2 or 3. But even more so, potentially, with this group. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Let's get into your thoughts on that. Is there anything that you are vehemently against the Titans doing in this upcoming draft? One thing that I'm not vehemently against, I'm not saying absolutely not, but trading back, at least based off of a lot of analysis of this year's draft, trading too far back might be not a great decision. But we'll get into your thoughts on this coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and The Game Nashville app. TD, Teron Davenport, will join us in just over 1 hour. We'll get his thoughts on what he wants to see from the NFL Combine, which of course starts today in Indianapolis. But first, we are talking draft. I've read a lot of what some of the NFL gurus are saying, and there are a couple of overwhelming sentiments that the top 10 in this year's draft, or at least the projected top 10, because there's always players that can find themselves in the top 10, which pushes some of these other players into the top 12, top 15. But overall, the top of this draft is absolutely stacked, and there's a bit of a drop-off once you get into the second round, or the second half of the first round, rather. The other is there's a lot of guys that just aren't declaring for the draft that maybe would have 5 to 10 years ago because you're incentivized to stay in college football because of NIL. And as D-Mase pointed out, we're also on the tail end of those COVID babies. The COVID years where you got that extra 5th or 6th year in college, well, now those eligibilities have become exhausted, whereas some of these younger players might elect to stay in college a little bit longer because, look, everyone else has to leave. So I want to get into your thoughts. The Titans' approach with those two things in mind, 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you have a thought, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter texts in, says, if we don't draft Brock Bowers, then I will have no faith in our front office. None.
I hope they were kidding about that.
Brock Bowers is the only player in this year's draft. It's not like you also need a right tackle and a left tackle and a center and a receiver and a running back and a defensive, interior defensive line, exterior defensive line, corner, safety.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Tight end is probably last on that line of things we need.
But I will say, could we establish on the program, what are we going to call Brock Bowers? Because I think it's selling him short to call him a tight end.
He's a tight end. I can't even call him a hybrid tight end because we've seen that type of tight end. We see that type of tight end in the NFL now. Granted, we haven't seen that type of tight end of his caliber in the collegiate level. I mean, he was damn good in college. But Brock Bowers is, to me,
he's
just different. He's different from those. He's just an X factor. That's what he is. And, you can't quite pinpoint it, but you know what you see when you watch him play.
Yeah. He's just
he's
special.
a different,
he does
he's
things
just
other
a different
people
maker.
can't
Yeah.
do.
And, so call him a tight end, call him a wide receiver, call him a wide tight end, whatever you want to call it.
Call him a weapon.
Yeah, just call him a weapon.
Yeah.
Put him anywhere. You can put him in, he could run end arounds. He could run, quick screens, bubble screens. He could run it all. And that's what you need in your tight end in today's football. But the Titans don't need to draft him. Unless they get another first-round pick and they draft all, and then they come back around and draft Bowers.
Where are they getting that other first-round pick?
Yeah, we ain't getting another first-round. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. And no, hell no, he ain't trading Jeffrey Simmons. But no, I still wouldn't do it.
I'm not opposed to it.
I mean,
I think Brock Bowers is a difference maker.
He is a difference maker, but we need a left tackle. And if Alt's sitting there, take Alt. But
if Alt's sitting there,
yeah,
you take Alt. If Alt's not sitting there,
then
I'm still not. Bowers.
I wouldn't. If they were to take, if Alt wasn't there and say, because I think they need a receiver, but it's not desperate. I think they do need another pass catcher. If Alt is gone and say Fashanu is not there, or he's there, but you got Blake Bowers rated ahead of him, what do you do as an organization?
I think you take the best player available.
Or you move down a couple of spots and kind of go there.
Let's say you're at 7 and you have, let's say, Brock Bowers rated as the 4th best player, hypothetically. Brock Bowers 4th, Joe Alt 5th, and both of them are sitting there. But you view left tackle as more of a position of need and more of a premier position. I don't think it's crazy just to take the 5th best player at 7 rather than the 4th best player at 7, just based off of other needs.
Because you are getting one of the top players, and it's not like you're falling completely off the board to draft the guy that's right behind, say, a Blake, a Bowers. If you do have him ranked 4th and you have Alt 5th, I'm taking Alt, or I'm moving down if indeed I feel that conflicted. But if I'm that conflicted, I'm just what's going to keep our quarterback upright? Take the tackle. Catch the tackle.
Another texter texts in, says, question for D-Mase. How would you feel drafting a receiver in the top 10 that doesn't run at the Combine or Pro Day? Corey Davis never ran before the draft, and we see how that turned out.
Yeah, I think Corey Davis has some, if I'm not mistaken, he had some issues injury-wise, and that's why he didn't run at the Combine, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a complete red flag to me. If you have some type of foot or hamstring or knee and you're choosing not to run, then okay, that's a red. Not to say I won't draft you, but you're not going to be, in the top 5 for me. Unless you come back at your pro day and you run a really good time, then I'm like, okay, I saw what I needed to see, and now I can draft you. But if a receiver's not running, and it's not just the Combine, I don't care. Honestly, I really don't care if you run at the Combine or not, as long as you run somewhere. Yeah. Like if you run at your pro day, then I'm good with that.
Do you view them any differently? Like if a player decides to forego workouts at the Combine but works out at the pro day, do you view that with a red flag? Do you view those two any differently?
No, because this is a high-stake business now. So much emphasis is put on all this. And if you have you can have one bad day and it can ruin it for you for the next 3 months. And before that bad day, they projected you as a top 25, 30 pick. And then you have that bad day because of, just everything that goes along with the Combine. Now that follows you for the next 2 or 3 months. So to me, when a guy, if he's not running at the Combine or not working out at the Combine, it's not as big of an issue for me. I'm not a GM, not a head coach, but it's not as big an issue for me. Come there, do the interviews, take your physical, and then you could be gone. But know that there's no excuses now for your pro day. You have taken an opportunity. You have taken it from having 2 opportunities to make your first impression to only 1 now. Okay? So you got to understand that as a player.
Take that opportunity.
Yeah, you got to understand that as a player that if you don't run at the Combine or do anything at the Combine, I get it. I'm not going to hold it against you. But on your pro day, there can't be any excuses. Like, you had extra months to work and do everything you needed to do to prepare yourself for a pro day, because the pro days are what?
Your facilities with your teammates and your coaches around you. It's
Absolutely.
Obviously, I've never done it, but I can feel that's probably a much more comfortable environment.
Oh, it is definitely
a much more comfortable.
It's a much more comfortable environment. So I'm not opposed to guys not working out. I'm not, but again, I'm not there picking players. I'm not the GM and I'm not the head coach or, guy scouting. If a guy doesn't run at the Combine, I get it. I understand it. But know that now when you run at the pro day, this is all we got now. I can't, sometimes it works for you, sometimes it works against you running at the Combine. That's why a lot of guys are kind of shying away from it. We'll do the drills, but we won't run.
Right.
We'll do the interviews, but we won't do the drills and we won't run. We'll do the height, weight measurements. We'll do the bench press, but we're not doing anything on the field. And I get it. I get it, because that can ultimately cost you upwards of millions of dollars.
Right.
If you don't run well at the Combine.
I did see an article. The headline was Marvin Harrison Jr. is not preparing for the Combine. He's preparing for the
And
NFL.
I love that. I was just reading that article. I love that. And I think more guys, especially at his caliber, more guys should take that approach. Because what did I say last year? Was it last year or 2 years before? 2 years ago. And I said it last year too. I said, you see these guys getting hurt. Why? Because they're preparing for the Combine and not for a season. Good thing his dad played in the NFL. He knows what it's about. He's had coaches that are coaching in the NFL. I'm sure he hasn't even picked the agent yet. But I'm sure people that he's talking to is, listen, you're going to be a top prospect.
Yeah.
You need to get yourself ready for the season, not the Combine. So I get it.
What does Marvin Harrison have to gain? Truly. We all view him as a top 3, top 5 prospect in this year's draft. I think we all view him as the top receiver in this year's draft. If he falls past 5, I will be shocked and floored. But what does he have to lose? Everything.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars to lose. He has a lot
Absolutely.
to lose. What if he tears his hamstring running the 40 at the combine? Like, I understand it. I get it. And I also understand from a GM perspective. But from a player perspective, if you have nothing to gain and everything to lose, why do it?
Yeah.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. Bring up Marvin Harrison Jr. We've been talking some receivers. So what are some moves that the Titans could make in free agency, in the draft, to bolster up that position of need? One suggestion by a national talking head, a national insider, that we'll get D-Mase's thoughts on coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and The Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. First day of the NFL Combine starts today. TD, Teron Davenport, will join us in 1 hour. I'm intrigued to get TD's kind of perspective on what you can really take away from the Combine, what's something that's a game changer, a deal breaker, something that really kind of makes you turn your head and say, oh, okay, what this guy is doing at the Combine is something that we need to take note of and something that we need to pay attention to. So TD will join us in 1 hour. But I wanted to throw this to you, D-Mase. This was put out by Aaron Schatz, who formerly of FootballOutsiders.com. Now he's a contributor for ESPN, but a very analytically driven guy. Very, percentages and divisions and numbers and letters and analytics. Very analytically driven guy. He has a 2024 NFL offseason guide. Bold moves, trades and free agency, and the draft for all 32 teams in the NFL. And I always love these bold moves because a lot of them are so off the wall and so bonkers that it's like, no way. If that actually happened, that would be insane. But we know crazy things happen in the National Football League, especially this time of year. Draft time and free agency, we know that crazy things can happen. The bold move that he has for the Tennessee Titans: sign wide receiver Tyler Boyd. Now, I am not against the Titans signing Tyler Boyd, but if that is the boldest move that the Titans make this offseason, we have a problem.
Yeah, I can't see that as being a bold move. Tyler Boyd is a good player. He is. But does he move the needle? If he does, it's very, very slightly. If that. Bold moves would be to make a serious run for Mike Evans or T. Higgins. Those are bold moves for me. Even Pittman Jr., if you want to go down that road, that's more of a bolder move than getting a Tyler Boyd, because now you're going after three guys that are proven commodities, that are starters for their team. Tyler Boyd isn't a starter. He plays a lot because they run the 3 wide receiver package a lot. But he's not, if they were, going with just 2 wides, he's not the starter. Pittman Jr. is, obviously Mike Evans, and then T. Higgins, those 3 guys. So if you're making serious moves to try to get those 3 guys, that would be a bold move. The boldest move would be, as much as I love Mike Evans, and I think they should pursue it, at least kick the tires, the boldest move would be to, sign and trade for T. Higgins. That would be a bold move, because not only do you have to pay him, you're giving up assets to get him. That's more of the bolder move than anything. You don't have to give up anything for Tyler Boyd, and you don't have to pay him top dollar.
And he's also not going to be enough of a difference maker in this offense to be truly considered bold. That's what makes a bold decision. Is it something that's incredibly risky, but you see the payoff in the long run? That trading for T. Higgins and ultimately signing T. Higgins to that next deal, which is going to be lucrative in the 30s. Is that fair? Like, for certain?
Well,
in the 30s for sure?
Yeah, he's getting 21 as a franchise. So I would tend to believe he's worth another $8 million per year or close to it.
It's going to be pricey. But you can see the payoff.
Yeah.
You see he has the relationship with Brian Callahan. You know that he fits into this offense. You know that he would upgrade this passing game. To what extent? Not to a Jamar Chase extent, but I still think he would absolutely upgrade this passing game. That is a bold move. But Tyler Boyd is a fine player. Tyler Boyd would be your number 3.
And that's the thing. Like, okay, you bring him in as it currently sits now. You bring him in, he's your number 3. I know people are still sort of hesitant on Traylon Burks, and rightfully so. I'm not here, y'all know how I feel about Traylon Burks. So I don't think, if I haven't convinced you yet, then damn it, I'm not going to convince you.
You haven't convinced me
exactly.
yet, D-Mase.
So I guess I'm not going until he actually plays and start putting what I'm saying on the field.
I need to see it to believe it.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Exactly. So my thing is, the way it sits, D-Hop would be your number one, and I say it begrudgingly with all the respect in the world, because it's not about me. It's not about who D-Hop's career say he is. It says he's a Hall of Fame guy. But where he's at in his career says that if he's your number one, then your offense may not be able to reach the potential it needs to reach from a passing standpoint.
And we saw that on full
Exactly.
display.
We saw it last year. He had a damn good year, but their offense still struggled. Offensively, they still struggled in the passing game because they didn't have someone to offset that. They didn't have another receiver that just a bona fide number one that just came out and balled every game. So if he comes in, like you said, he's your 3, because I'm sure the Titans are thinking, this is the year we need to see Traylon Burks.
Mm-hmm.
This is everything is everything is falling your way. Offensive coordinator / head coach, play caller. He wants to pass the football. You got a young quarterback that can throw the ball through the stadium. So there's no excuses now. Mm-hmm. So you figure D-Hop 1, he's 2, and Tyler would be your 3. Or you choose to bring back, Chris Moore. So then he has to battle with Chris Moore as the 2 or as the 3 or the 4. So to me, again, that's not a bold move, because ultimately he's no higher than your 2. And that's not bold.
And that's, I think, even would be a stretch.
Exactly.
And that's not bold,
No.
considering how many moves that you need, how many positions that you have to fill. Mm-hmm. Bringing in a receiver that's not really a game changer, isn't a speedster, isn't a burner, and was not really that much of a game changer in Cincinnati's offense either. That's not bold. Mm-mm. And you bring up Traylon Burks. Aaron Schatz writes, the Titans are set on the outside with DeAndre Hopkins and Traylon Burks. Like, no, they're not.
They're not.
No, they're not set on the outside.
I would love for them to be set.
But they're not.
But they're not. There's still questions. There are questions. Again, there are questions with both the guys. One, a guy that hasn't shown it enough, and he hasn't been on the field enough. Listen, he's had some freak injuries, mm-hmm. and it's not been hamstrings or something like that where, you can say this is chronic. No, it's been things that it happens because it's a physical sport. So we're still trying to figure out, can he be that guy, because we haven't seen enough on him, mm-hmm. enough of him. And then D-Hop, again, it's the age. We know who he is. We know what he brings to the table, but we need more from our number one. Not to say that D-Hop doesn't give us a lot, but again, I go back to when your offense, if he's your number one guy, if your offense doesn't have someone that can, that can really stretch the field, that can really, cause that mismatch, anywhere on the field, then your passing game is going to I'm not going to say it's going to struggle, but it's not going to be the best it can possibly be. The potential is more if you had a top flight number one and D-Hop as your number 2. Now we got a hell of a passing game, because if you take out our number 1, we got a guy right here that all he does is catch his balls. He catches football. That's all he does. Mm-hmm. So if he can be our number 2, we're set. We're good. As long as nobody get hurt. But they don't have that now. And that's what they're looking for. So to me, there are questions with both of them. But one has to do with his age, and can we put this much on him, to be our number 1 flight guy? And the other he hadn't stayed on the field long enough. Mm-mm. He's just been, for whatever reason, these fluke injuries happen.
I cannot go into this season with Traylon Burks as very much, if hardly at all, a factor. If he ends up being one, great. That's fantastic, mm-hmm. because I want to see that from Traylon Burks. You see the talent; it's there. We saw it at Arkansas. Mm-hmm. The speed, the dog in him, the ability to create explosive plays. It's there. Mm-hmm. We just haven't seen it in a Titans uniform, or at least on a consistent enough basis.
Consistent enough basis that would say, okay, if he, because I look at it from this standpoint. The difference between he and Will Levis, and obviously I know the difference is the position, but the difference between he and Will Levis, why do we feel optimistic about Will Levis moving forward, but many are not as optimistic about Traylon Burks? Well, because when Will was out there, he showed those things that we just thought like, man, okay, if we could straighten out this offensive line, maybe get him one more pass catcher, we see what he can do. Like, we see the arm strength. We see the mobility. We see the toughness. We see the grit in him. There's something there that we like, okay, we just need to get some things around him, but we believe we're good. Now, he's going to have to prove it this year too, but the first impression was, wow, I think we may have something here. That wasn't the first impression with Traylon Burks. It wasn't. And that's why, we look at this second year, we look at Will Levis, because in our minds, okay, we saw something there. But when we look at Traylon Burks, it's like, we didn't see enough,
I think for me, it's more so Burks' ability to stay on the field.
And that's the thing.
We know the talent is there,
Exactly.
but let's say if Will Levis this season struggles to stay on the field, he's hurt, and then he comes back, and then he gets hurt again, then he comes back,
We
and
have
hurt
the
again.
same questions
We have the
about him that
exact
we
same-
have Burks.
100%, because now we have 2 full seasons of Traylon Burks not being able to stay on the field. And some of it's not his fault. Like, it is a cheap shot against the Philadelphia Eagles that leaves him with a concussion. No, that's not his fault, but that's still games that he wasn't available for. So if you have 2 full seasons of sample size of not being able to stay on the field, and even when he was on the field this past season, he struggled. I can't go into this season thinking that you are going to be a pivotal part of my offense. If Traylon Burks goes into this season, if Traylon Burks has a monstrous season, over 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns, that he starts to look like or even serves as your one this season, then great. I think then this offense is going to be in a better position than it is now. But I cannot count on that. I cannot accommodate for that. All I have to do is continue to build my passing game, continue to build my offense. And if you can become part of that offense, then great, but we're not going to stick around and wait for you.
Well, I will say this, and I truly believe this. I'm trying to pull up something right quick before, because I don't want to, misspeak on the number again. Okay. If he plays, because the coaching staff is different, the way they approach the game from an offensive standpoint is going to be a lot different. I believe if he plays 14 games or more, he will be a 1,000-yard receiver, because I think the emphasis is going to be, let's see what we have in this kid. And if he's able to stay on the field, he benefits just as much as anybody on his team. Maybe even Will Levis from an early career standpoint, because this is maybe his last and final shot to prove to people that, at least to prove to the Titans he can play and that he can be a number 1 guy.
3 strikes, you're out.
Exactly. So to me, if he plays 14 games or more, he will be a 1,000-yard receiver, because the emphasis is different than what it was a year ago with this team. They're going to emphasize getting him the football because they understand the talent, they see the talent, and they want to see the talent materialize, because if it does, now that's one less position we got to worry about. Now we feel, even if, D-Hop, he's going to be gone after this upcoming season, at least we know we got one bona fide wide receiver, and that would be Traylon Burks. Now we need to add another one, or we add one in this draft and figure we can sort of segue out of D-Hop after this season and implement that other guy, and we can have a 1-2 punch for the foreseeable future. That's why I believe that, if he plays that many games, at least he will be a 1,000-yard receiver. He will be a much different receiver than what we've seen in the past. I just think because of the injuries that he had, these fluke injuries, and they did not make him a priority in that offense. They didn't, for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe they didn't like that. I don't know what it was. Maybe they didn't like him getting injured all the time.
I don't know how much they trusted him.
We've seen Vrabel do that. But I think they're going to show Burks in this offseason, we want you here. We want you to be that guy. Now it's up to you to take that baton and run with it. We're going to give you every opportunity to be the number one guy. I don't think they did that last year because they were just so ready. They were just so comfortable with falling back on D-Hop. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to develop a young player, you gotta put into him what you want out of him. And I don't know if the Titans were doing that. But then, first, when you're on the field, you got to be on the field for one.
Yeah.
You got to be on the field. And then you got to stay in the game. You got to stay in it. I'm saying mentally. Mm-hmm. You got to stay in the game, regardless of if balls are coming your way or not. You got to stay mentally in the game. And I think there may have been some times where he wasn't because why? He wasn't getting targeted. They didn't even look his way, So I see the future much brighter now that they got Brian Callahan as their offensive coordinator / head coach.
And I hope that you're right. I do. Because that puts this Titans offense in a much better position. That gives Will Levis another pass catcher. That at least starts to shape the future of what this receiving core could look like if Treylon Burks can be part of it. I just can't assume that he's going to be. Because I haven't seen anything on a consistent enough basis to lead me to believe that he can do that, right? That he will do that he can come into full fruition. I have to build my offense with Treylon Burks or not. And right now, he hasn't been part of it. I can't continue to build around this offense just hoping that players come into their full potential. Hope is not a strategy. It's the same thing with, I think, Nicholas Petit-Frere.
No, you're right.
Do I hope that he can turn into the starting right tackle? Sure. But I can't go into the season banking on it that he's going to be. I have to make accommodations at right tackle outside of Nicholas Petit-Frere. And if he can be a certified starting tackle, then great. Then that's your solution. That's not necessarily the case right now.
No.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We got a bunch of thoughts on Treylon Burks. Maybe some heated thoughts on Treylon Burks. We'll get into those coming up next. Plus, there's another name that Aaron Schatz lists on this article. Again, it's ESPN.com. 2024 NFL offseason, bold moves, trades in free agency, and draft for all 32 teams. Aaron Schatz says the bold move for the Tennessee Titans is sign Tyler Boyd. That's not bold. That's not changing things. That's not blowing my socks off. That's not, the Buffalo Bills trading away Stephon Diggs. Now that's bold. Signing Tyler Boyd, that's not bold. That's just a move. It's just a move that you make in the offseason. But there's another name that Aaron Schatz mentions for another team in the AFC. Is it a name that if this player is in fact on the trading block, the Tennessee Titans could take a look at? We'll get into that coming up next, and of course your thoughts as well. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, TD at the top of the hour. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Brian, you obviously worked with a lot of great wide receivers in Cincinnati. What are the qualities that you value most at that position?
Selfless. That's a big part. You got to have selfless guys. They're a huge part of the run game. They run routes to get other guys open. They work in tandem together, and so that's an important part. That's a characteristic as far as physical traits go. You want guys that are big, strong, fast, and can catch. That's a pretty easy way to go about it. The more of those guys you have, the better you're going to be. So, but yeah, we have. I tell you what's great about and this is a huge compliment to those receivers in Cincinnati. Incredibly selfless. Love playing together. Know when their time that the ball could go anywhere, and so they never complained, not once about who was getting catches or who was getting targets. They knew that at some point it would come for them, and so they just did their jobs every day. They practiced really hard. I thought that was the one thing that was really impressive about that group of players is their practice intensity. They'd get after it, and that's why we were good, is because of the way that they practiced. So, yeah, I don't know if I kind of went on a tangent there. I apologize, but hope that answered your question.
There go those Titans head coach Brian Callahan, what he looks for in a receiver. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, tomorrow it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, then you will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Breaking down Aaron Schatz's list of bold moves that each of the 32 teams in the NFL could make in the offseason and free agency and the draft, and his bold move for the Titans is sign Tyler Boyd. That's not a bold move.
Nah.
You need to make much, much bolder moves this offseason because you have the cash and you have the resources to do it. If the Titans want to sign Tyler Boyd, then fine. He's your 3. Yeah. That's not a bold move to bring in your 3.
Nah.
So, now, I have a question for you, D-Mase. Mm-hmm. And I am by no means pounding on the table for this to happen.
Okay.
But I just want your thoughts on this because I wholeheartedly understand that the last thing the Titans need to do is to get in bed with another underachieving first-round receiver who has a ton of question marks about what he is and what his future is in the National Football League. But this bold move from Aaron Schatz for the Denver Broncos is to trade wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Mm-hmm. What do you think of Jerry Jeudy? I feel like there's so much left on the bone there with Jerry Jeudy that he was insane in college. And look, I understand Treylon Burks was too. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of questions about what Treylon Burks has been these last 2 seasons and what he's going to be in the future. Jerry Jeudy might find himself in a very similar position, and maybe he's just not a first-round talent. But would that be something that you would look into as an option for the Titans?
Trading for Jerry Jeudy? Listen, when Jerry Jeudy came out, I loved him as a receiver.
He's so good.
He just was in college, the burst, the speed, the run after catch, the catching of the football being natural to him in college, as it was. And you had to be damn good because it's not like Alabama only had Jerry Jeudy. They had a bunch of receivers.
I mean, that was the most stacked receiver room that I think I've ever seen in college.
And I think all of those guys were either first round or second round picks. Mm-hmm. So you had to have a certain level of ability to play the game if you are a starter at Alabama. So I did like Jerry Jeudy. Now, Jerry Jeudy's career hasn't been the career that up until this point that many thought he would have. He's dealt with injuries, and he's missed a significant amount of time in his career. I think the second year he missed the most games, but he's never eclipsed double-digit touchdowns. And you're talking about a former first-round pick. What was he? 15th pick overall. So never had a double-digit. Last year he had 2 touchdowns. And last year, the year before that was the most yards he had in his career. He had like 970-some yards. So. But then he dipped down again to just below 800. So making a move for Jerry Jeudy, I'm not sure. Again, what are you bringing him in to be? Are you bringing him in to be your 2, your 1, your 3? What are you bringing him in to be? If you're bringing him in to...
Because he's not a 1.
Be your 2, well, you got a 2. It seems like you got a bunch of 2s, on your team. And that's no.
It doesn't solve your problem.
It doesn't solve the problem that you need that top flight number one, because at this point we don't believe they have the top flight number one headed for the future. Regardless of what I think about Traylon Burks, I think he needs to prove it on the field. So going out and get Jerry Jeudy, I'm not sure if that satisfies. It gives you depth, yes. It does vehemently give you depth, but does it give you the playmaking ability that you need? Again, he's been in Denver for 4 years. He's never eclipsed over 6 touchdowns in a season. And they brought him in to be a difference maker in their receiving core. Now, they had Sutton, I believe, at the time, too. But he was going to be their number one, and Sutton was going to be their number two.
Which on paper sounded like a fairly good
Exactly. As on paper sounds great.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way for whatever reason. So now you can, even in a throwaway year, a year ago, not this season, but the last season when everything just went haywire, they end up firing the coach after the season. That was his best year. And then you figure, okay, they're bringing in Sean Payton, this guru of offense, and he has less yards and less touchdowns than he did the previous season, and he played one more game than he did the previous season. I don't know if I'm willing to give up what it needs to, because they're going to be asking for probably a 3 if they do trade Jerry Jeudy.
Well, then I'll ask you this. Would you trade Traylon Burks for Jerry Jeudy? I know it's the devil you do know versus the devil that you don't.
I just think
they find themselves in similar positions. I know
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy is going into, this will be his 5th season in the NFL, so it's different that he would be going into a contract year, whereas Traylon Burks would not. That Jerry Jeudy is older, but in theory, it's similar situations.
Yeah.
2 former first-round picks drafted in the middle of the first round, expected to be the future, the number one for their respective teams, and have fallen short of expectations both on the field and because of injury. Is it fresh start time for both of them?
It's tough because you just said it. The devil you know, the devil you don't know. Or I like to put it, the angel you know and the angel you don't know. I guess both of them would be good in a sense. But a part of me says yes, because maybe both guys do just need to have a fresh start somewhere else. Even though I do believe Traylon, I'm still with him, with this team and in what he could potentially do. But I look at it from Jerry Jeudy's standpoint. Jerry Jeudy has been in the NFL 1 more year than Traylon Burks. But Jerry Jeudy has been a critical part of an offense. Like, he's been in a game plan every week for an offense. So he's used to that. He's used to getting in the flow of the game. He's a little bit more seasoned than Traylon Burks, even though it's by 1 season, but it's by over 200 or 300 snaps or targets. Let's say that. That would be a tough one for me because I don't necessarily see a negative in doing it. But it's like, man, I want to cultivate. I want to, have my players that I watch develop. I want to develop my players that I drafted. I don't want to draft someone so someone else can possibly develop him later on down the line or the next following year and he ends up having a great year and we're looking at it like, oh my goodness, we gave up on him 1 year too soon. But then again, it could be the flip side. We keep him here and he doesn't develop into much, and then you have an opportunity to get a guy who has made plays in this league consistently. So to me, if they were to do it, I wouldn't be upset. But it would have to just be a swap. I'm not giving you anything extra. I'm not giving you anything extra. I'm not. You take my first rounder for your first rounder. Both of them were drafted in the same spot, 15, I believe.
Actually, I think I would want something else in return. Because you're getting a former first-round pick with a couple of years left on his rookie deal. I am getting a player that's going into his 5th season. I'm going to have to send him to another contract. So I might need a little something else to sweeten the pot. Do you want to lose Jerry Jeudy for nothing in free agency next year? Or do you want to get a player who hasn't come to fruition, that has some potential, just needs to stay healthy and might just need a fresh start? So I would want Jerry Jeudy and something else, since you've got 2 players on different contracts and different deals.
I mean, you can go down that route. and I'm sure the Titans would look at it possibly from that standpoint. But if that deal was to come across the table and it happened, or if there are speculations that it would happen, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I wouldn't. A part of me does want to watch Traylon develop here. But, you're getting a guy that coming out of college I really liked. And if you can bring him here and you can get the production out of him that you got from Denver even more, because now you are a critical point in what we're doing, part of what we're doing, then I wouldn't be upset if they made that trade. I wouldn't be. I wouldn't go fishing it out. But if they were like, hey, listen, what do you think about Judy for Burks, and possibly we can sweeten the pot with maybe a 5th round pick? And I'm like, okay. I think about it like, okay, because you wouldn't even Jerry Judy, you wouldn't have to pay him a lot of money on this new contract. No. You wouldn't. He's
not a $30 million receiver.
He's honestly. But I always say you're only worth as much as the market want to pay you. So if somebody want to pay him $25 million, then so be it. Jerry, get your money.
Go ahead.
But
it's not going to be me.
Exactly.
But you go ahead.
From what I've seen, he's 10, 15 per. That's what I see.
That's a fair number.
Yeah, that's what I see.
I was thinking 12 and a half, honestly, in my head.
Yeah.
I swear, that was the number in my head.
Yeah.
Because he's not a top flight receiver. But he may become your number one receiver at a cut rate, at a cut price. You may end up getting more out of him than what you're paying him, in a sense.
And that would be the reason why you would do it.
Exactly.
Is because you see the potential there, and you say, look, Denver's offense has been in flux the last couple of years. Russell Wilson kind of stinks. Like, do we think that we can bring him here and put him in this Brian Callahan offense, and it gives us a little bit more speed? It stretches the field a little bit more. I would see it.
I'm with it. I like it.
I like it too.
The reason being, I'm going to list off the quarterbacks from Denver since Jerry Judy's rookie season.
It hasn't been pretty.
You ready for this? You ready? Let's go here. We're going to go Drew Lock, Jeff Driscoll, Brett Ripon.
Who?
Exactly.
And that's what you call his son, isn't it?
It has to be.
No, it's Ripon. It's Ripon.
Ripon, sorry.
It's Ripon.
Teddy Bridgewater.
I've never heard that name in my life, I don't think.
Ripon, his dad, Mark Ripon, played in the NFL.
Okay.
Teddy Bridgewater. And
Hey, I like Teddy B.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. I mean, that list is abysmal. I mean,
Russell Wilson is probably the best one on that list, and Russell stinks.
Yeah.
if you give me Russ from like 5-6 years ago, sure. But no, it's not.
This is not Russell Wilson
not
from
Russell.
Seattle.
I look at it as like a Marcus Mariota situation where he had a continuous evolution of different coordinators. With Jerry Jeudy, this is a fresh start with a younger quarterback, a high-octane offense from what it sounds like from a coordinator perspective. I think this is a win-win situation. And the fact that Denver's always looking for a wide receiver to kind of supplement what they've never seemed to get as a true number one, I mean, they could be risking it a little bit, but Tim Patrick's their like number 2, number 3 guy that always seems to get hurt. They can never have somebody healthy. Traylon kind of falls into that category a little bit in my perspective. But, I mean, Courtland Sutton is their true number 1 and then possibly supplement that in the draft. There you go.
The risk that exists is if you trade that guy and he turns into what you drafted him to be in that next stop, but you don't make this move unless you feel certain enough that, look, it's not going to happen here.
Exactly.
We feel like we've exhausted everything that we can with this player. I feel like Denver is at that point with Jerry Jeudy. I think that Denver is probably looking for a trade partner for Jerry Jeudy because they're going to lose him for nothing in free agency next year anyway. Are the Titans there with Traylon Burks? That's what I don't know. Could the Titans look at this and say Traylon Burks needed a fresh start and Brian Callahan and this new system is the fresh start that he needed? That I don't know. But I don't hate it. Because not only do you get a replacement for Traylon Burks that has as many questions as Traylon Burks, but it just kind of feels like a swap. But you would also probably potentially get another pick in the process.
Yeah. So it might end up being, more of a win for you than anything because you're getting a guy that has proven he can play in this league. Jerry Jeudy can play. Now, whether he's a 1 or a 2, that's up for debate. And maybe he turns into a 1 because he's getting they're paying more attention to him from an offensive standpoint. Or if he's a number 2, then okay, you got your number 2, but you still got to go find your number 1. With Denver, it's he doesn't have much stuff to refer back to as far as playing wise, because he's been on the field, he's been off the field, he's been targeted, he's been a no-show. So they really don't have a good grasp of who he can be as a player. They can work the way I'm looking at it from, I've seen bits and pieces. I think something's there. Now, can you be the guy or coach that get it all out of him, where he puts it all together for that year? So I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I would hate to see him go, because I'm like, man, it just seems like this
potential.
It just seems like this is the way the Titans operate, right? They get receivers, either they don't hang on to them long enough, or they don't develop them well enough, or when they do develop them, they end up getting rid of them.
Yeah.
It's just like, but you want to see this one work, and it doesn't seem like at this point we're headed down that road as far as him being here for a long time. I hope it does change.
Denver has the 12th overall pick, a 3rd-round pick from New Orleans in the Sean Payton trade, a 4th-round pick from Miami in the Bradley Chubb trade, a 5th-round pick, another 5th-round pick from the Jets, and then a 6th-round pick. They have picks in this year's draft.
Yeah. Now say if Denver, because this may not be out of the realm of possibility. Denver sits at 11. The Titans sits at 7.
Denver's at 12.
12. Titans sits at 7. If the draft falls a particular way, then if Denver wants if Denver wants an Adunze or a Neighbors and they're still there, would they be willing to move up in the draft? Now this is where I would ask for Jerry Jeudy, and I wouldn't even have to give up really Traylon Burks, because if you want to move up, what's that? 4 spots? Yeah, 4 spots. No, 5, because they're 12.
5.
You want to move up 5 spots to potentially get your wide receiver, your number 1 wide receiver? Well, I'm not giving up Traylon Burks. I give you that 7 that I have, and you give me Jerry Jeudy to move back.
And next year's first.
Possibly, or next year's second or something. Where,
I would need a first. To go from 7 to 12, I need a first.
But if I feel I can still get my guy, if Alt is gone, because many believe the Chargers may pick Alt now. Say if the Chargers pick Alt. Now he's gone. That guy you wanted. Fashano was still there. Say I move back to 12. They move up. Well, you got to give me Jerry Jeudy, because now you potentially you get either Neighbors or a Dunze, one of them, and that's your number 1 receiver. Now
but
I move back.
My options are Jerry Jeudy.
But I'm saying you could get him.
Or Malik Neighbors. I have to stay put.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is you could still get if you still can get your tackle, and now you can get that other wide receiver too, that is a proven wide receiver. Now, is he a 1? Is he a 2? I don't know.
Is he proven?
Yeah, he's proven he can play in this league. Jerry Jeudy, he's proven that he can play in this league. Now, again, what is he? A 1 or 2? You got to really think about that now, because if the tackle is still there, because the draft is going to be weird, it's going to change, and things are going to happen, and the guys are going to fall that you think were top 10 picks, they're going to end up falling. Maybe that guy falls right back to you at 12, and you got you a Jerry Jeudy, and you didn't have to give up Traylon Burks.
And I need a first next year too. I need that. That is a non-negotiable. Give me your first next year. I don't think anyone expects Denver to be that great this year. So probably be a top 15 pick.
Yeah, could be.
Let's get your thoughts on that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone. I'm feeling comfortable all year round, and you can tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow as Vanderbilt men's basketball takes on Arkansas on the road. Pregame at 7:30 p.m., tip-off at 8, with coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Preds fans, do not miss Wednesday night Smashville Live show at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 p.m. See your Predator star players up close and personal, plus get autographs and pictures. This week's special guests are Michael McCarron and Dante Fabro. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. We are talking receivers. And one thing that we proposed in the last segment, Traylon Burks for Jerry Jeudy. Now, if I'm the Titans and I'm going to make that move, I need a little something extra, a little something, a little lanyap from the Denver Broncos, because I am trading you a player going into his third year on his rookie deal, whereas Jerry Jeudy is going into his fifth year on his rookie deal. So I need a little something to sweeten the pot. But essentially, Jerry Jeudy for Traylon Burks. And I do want to get the people's thoughts on it as well.
Yeah. Again, if that was indeed the trade, I wouldn't be opposed to it. It was funny. Jared texted me, and he said, what about Calvin Ridley? Which, if you know me, if you've been listening to the show, which I know you have, I've been screaming about Calvin Ridley for the last 2 or 3 seasons. The minute he got suspended, I think I said the Titans need to try to get him. They didn't. Jacksonville made a under-the-radar sort of move to get him. And everybody was saying, well, why are they doing that? Well, it's not about that year. It's about the next following year. And they got what they wanted to get out of him. Now, will they be able to sign him back? I don't know. But, Jared is right. Why trade for this commodity when you can just get this commodity if you pay for him? If you pay enough in Calvin Ridley, because he's a free agent.
And you have the money to spend.
Yeah, you have the money to spend.
We cannot be afraid to spend money.
Yeah, so to me, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be opposed, because you don't have to move. You don't have to try to move things around to make things work. You put a contract on the table that you feel is respectful to the player in Calvin Ridley, and, he decides whether he wants to be a Titan or not. I think they should make a hard push for Calvin Ridley. He is a bona fide number one. He does bring speed to your team right now. So, as in regards to the Jerry Jeudy, Traylon Burks, I think that number one option, if I am bringing Calvin Ridley in the picture now, is let's just do away with all that. Let's sign Calvin Ridley, get a wide receiver competition going, and let it work itself out, because you would then have Ridley, Burks, D-Hop. Let's say you sign Chris Moore back. Just let them compete. Let them compete. And whoever shows it, that's who our starters are. And let's go, because it's going to make everyone better. It will even make D-Hop better at his age, because now he's getting pushed by these younger guys, which is never a bad thing. Yeah.
And even if the Titans decide to do that, whether it's Calvin Ridley or another free agent, I'm still not opposed to taking a receiver at 7.
If they were to get Calvin Ridley, I wouldn't touch a receiver at 7. I wouldn't, because now we're young enough at that position. Beside D-Hop, we're young enough at that position.
Because I can't count on Burks.
Yeah, you can't count on Burks, but I can count on Calvin Ridley. And we may have another, a guy that we can get on the team, whatnot. But we can also draft later on down the line and get receivers going. Because, Nick brought up a good point. Is the Titans one player away from making it to the Super Bowl or making it to play? No. So this is not just a one-year process. If you don't get that guy this year in the draft, you can get him next year, but you've already gotten a Calvin Ridley, and you got Burks on your team, and you got D-Hop.
And D-Ben Texan says you're not getting a 2025 first-round pick by only moving down 5 spots. It rarely ever happens unless you're picking top 5 in the draft and another team is targeting a top quarterback. Your only hope is if somehow Daniels or May makes it to 7 and another team gets desperate. How do you know you're not going to get a first-round pick?
You don't know if you don't ask.
That's my price.
Yeah.
That's
Also,
my asking price.
Denver is desperate.
Denver is desperate for a quarterback.
They don't want Russ.
Who would want Russ? Russ stinks.
The AFL or the UFL.
Or somebody that needs a backup.
That too.
I mean, like they're very much so are desperate teams. And I'm setting my asking price high because, like you said, Nick, if there is a team desperate enough, they'll pay it. And I think that Denver would be trading up to 7 for, let's say, maybe a J.J. McCarthy, or in the off chance that a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May falls to 7. Because I think if Denver is trading up to 7, it's to get their quarterback.
I think one of those quarterbacks will fall to 7, and I don't think it'll be Caleb Williams.
Oh, no, he's going. Can we say he's going to Chicago?
Yeah, I believe he's going to Chicago.
We can break that Sharpie for now on our boards.
That puts Justin Fields on the market. But I do believe one of those quarterbacks will be there for the taking at 7. I don't know which one it is. Beside Caleb Williams, I don't know which one it is, but I think one of those quarterbacks will be there at 7 that Denver probably covets.
I think there's going to be a team that talks themselves into J.J. McCarthy being a franchise quarterback.
Could be Denver.
I don't know if he is or not. Frankly, there are a lot of things that I saw from him at Michigan that didn't look very franchise quarterback-esque, but there is going to be someone that talks themselves into J.J. McCarthy.
Oh, of course.
Whether that's, in a trade with the Titans at 7 or after 7 or whenever it'll be, that's gonna be an interesting one. I want your thoughts on this, D-Mase, quickly before we get to TD. Ben says trade Burks for Judy and sign Tyler Boyd. 3 number 2s that could all approach 1,000 yards. Offense would be fine.
Trade Burks for Judy. Sign Tyler Boyd.
So you would have Jerry Judy, Tyler Boyd, DeAndre Hopkins.
I mean, again,
It's an upgrade.
Yes, I'm not opposed to it. At least you're adding depth to the position, and depth that has played, some critical snaps in this league that have shown that they can go out there and be players in this league and make plays in this league. So again, I wouldn't be opposed to it, because not like, other than D-Hop, all these the other 2 guys would be late 20s, 27, 28, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And
Ridley's 29.
Well, Boyd would be the oldest. I think he's almost 30. If not, I think he may be 30 or going to be 30. He's either 29 or 30, one of those.
And D-Hop's 31.
So
it's an upgrade. I would still need more. You still don't have a number 1. You
to.
still don't have your burner. You still don't have your game-changing receiver.
You're right.
I think the Titans need to find their path to that. But it would at least be an upgrade. I want to get to TD's thoughts on this. Teron Davenport will join us coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on the Combine. How much can you really take away from the Combine? We'll also throw these hypotheticals toward TD coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. The NFL Combine kicks off today, and joining us now is TD, Teron Davenport, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, are you in Indianapolis this week?
Yeah, I'm in Indianapolis. I'm sitting here with Coach Mack, man. He's the mayor of Indianapolis. I tell you, there's not a soul that walks by that doesn't stop and shake his hand.
That's awesome. Well, tell the mayor of Indianapolis that we said hello. TD, I wanted to get your philosophy on the NFL Combine. I know that maybe some philosophies have changed over the years, but how much do you really think that you can take away from the Combine? Is it a game changer for you if a player doesn't run a 40 or doesn't do a certain workout this week?
No, it's not really a game changer for me. I mean, obviously, you like to see the guys compete, but, I mean, if they don't, like you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., he has reasons for it. I think really, like for me, like from my perspective, I like getting to sit in front of these guys and talk to them and just kind of gauge their love for football. And just, I always like to get like how much they know about the game. So like I'll throw a random player comp from back in the day, and you know, if they are like, hey, you know what, I remember that guy and I watched him, I kind of get a little thrill out of that. So that's pretty much what it is for me, you know, and also the opportunity to just, you know, talk to a lot of people here and really, you know, talking to the prospects, like gauge their competitiveness. Tell me why you're the best receiver here. Tell me why no quarterback here is better than you. So that's what I get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, bring up Marvin Harrison. You know, he has said, look, I'm preparing for the NFL, not the NFL Combine. Oh, Caleb Williams isn't going to be throwing. I have no problem with that. Those players have nothing to gain and everything to lose. They're already considered top prospects, so it doesn't bother me if they're not going to be doing certain workouts or the 40s or throwing or so on and so forth. Who are you going to have an eye on this week, TD? Who is on the TD radar this week at the Combine? Any position or specific player?
Yeah, no, you know, let me say this, though. I think Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels should absolutely throw. And, I mean, because you look like that's what you do.
Okay.
Like, you throw the football. Like, that's what you do. And you look at what C.J. Stroud did last year. He threw, and even you look at Stetson Bennett. He threw, and all of a sudden teams realized that he could throw that deep in-breaking route, and that he has a better arm than what was advertised at Georgia. So I think he should absolutely throw, both of those guys. But as far as like guys that I'm looking forward to seeing, I say Stetson Bennett. It leads me right to J.J. McCarthy, because I think he's another one whose ability was just kind of tapered by that offense, you know, the run-first offense. I mean, you look, there were games where, you know, there was one game where he didn't even throw the football in the second half. So I would like to see him. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these other guys run. You know, I think Keon Coleman, who I'm going to spend a lot of time with here this week, I think he's going to test really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. So those are two guys right off the bat. I think the Clemson corner, I think he's going to run pretty well too. I heard that at 6'2", he's going to run in the 4.3s, and if he does that, you know what, you know, he might as well go ahead and put some more commas behind that check he's about to get.
Yeah, you're right about that, TD. We're talking with Teron Davenport. He is up in Indianapolis this week for the NFL Combine. Now, you bring up the corner. The corner is Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. I think that's one of, you know, having DBs more. I would say having DBs more than wide receivers workout in the Combine, I think is critical for those guys, because I need to see how you're going to turn your hips. I need to see, you know, you getting in and out of breaks. I need to see that 40, because, listen, you have to be sometimes even faster because you're transition. You don't know what these receivers are doing, so you got to be able to transition from point A to point B just as well as they transition, you know, from you know, point A or point B of their routes, running a comeback or a curl. So beside Nate Wiggins, you know, what other DB are you going to be looking at? I know Alabama's DB, Kool-Aid, and the defensive back out of Iowa, but he's a safety / corner. So I look at him more of a safety nickel guy.
Yeah, and Cooper DeJean, he's not going to work out. So he'll be here for the interviews. I tell you a corner, like I keep mentioning him every time, we talk about cornerbacks, and that's Kyrie Jackson. He's a 6'3" cornerback. I watched him doing one-on-ones, move really well. He's out of Oregon. And, to be that size and able to transition in and out of his breaks and do the things that he was able to do as far as covering and one-on-ones, that impressed me. So I want to see how that transfers to testing. And even in watching, Washington tape, I watched a lot of Rome Odunze, and I consistently saw, he and Kyrie Jackson go at it, and there were times where Kyrie Jackson put the clamps on the guy opposite Odunze, and that's Jalen Polk. So I want to see him. I want to see also Malik Mustafa. He's not a corner, but he's a safety out of Wake Forest. He didn't do much at the Senior Bowl, but he's, I mentioned earlier where you bring up a guy, a comp like a blast from the past. Well, I told her he reminds me of Bob Sanders when I watch him play, and he lit up, and so I want to see how he's able to test. Bob Sanders, he tested out of this world when he was here. So I want to see Malik Mustafa.
Now, Caroline and I had a conversation about, if Alt is not there at 7, and maybe Neighbors is there or Dunze is there, but I've said to her, I said, listen, to me, receiver is a need, but it's not a dire need. I'm starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, if they can't get their tackle, then cornerback is a dire need for them, because right now they only have one cornerback on the roster under contract, and that's McQuarrie. Everyone else is a free agent. Now, you hope that they sign, a free agent. I know Xavier Howard, but he said his interest is possibly going somewhere else, so that may take him off the table. But what would you say if the Titans chose, if that guy is not there, whether it be Alt or Fashanu? Fashanu. We were trying to figure out, is it Fashanu or?
I was listening to the Athletic Football podcast over the weekend, and they called him Fashanu.
Yeah, I've never heard Fashanu. I've always heard Fashanu, but hey, I mean, we'll know in a couple of days when they announce him, right?
So if Alt is not there, say Fashanu is there, but you may have a cornerback rated higher than him, would you move down in the draft to then get that cornerback potentially, or would you stay at 7 and pick the offensive tackle?
Well, here's the thing, D-Mase, is really interesting because I was looking at the draft, just the order the last couple of days and just trying to see, okay, in what scenario would a team want to jump up and take the Titans pick? Well, you look at the Falcons, right? If they don't trade for a quarterback, you got J.J. McCarthy. He's probably going to be on their map. You know what I mean? And J.J. McCarthy is a rising prospect, among the draft rumors, so to speak. So now you look, they're at 8. If a team like the Raiders or somebody wants to jump the Falcons, now they move up to 7. And now, the Titans move down into the teens. And, yeah, that's when, some of these corners will be there. Keon Mitchell, a guy I really like out of Toledo. You mentioned Terrion Arnold. You mentioned Nate Webster. There's a bunch of guys that are going to be there that, at the cornerback position. And that is a position that is a premium one in this league. So I could definitely see them moving back. But there's just such a void offensive line, man. And there's not a premier tackle that they could get in free agency, so they have to look at that position in the first 2 rounds, within reason. Like, you never reach, but within reason, they have to look at that position. So it'll be tough to see a trade back, you know what I mean? If they do trade back and then they at the top of the second get a guy like Houston's Patrick Paul or somebody like that, now you're still working, but you still need to get that receiver, and that's where free agency for the receiver position comes into play. T. Higgins got tagged, and there's other guys available, but can you get that dominant guy that you really want?
We'll talk with Teron Davenport. He's up in Indianapolis this week covering the NFL Combine. Now, would you be opposed, because you did talk about, say if the Titans aren't able to address the wide receiver position, or address it to a point where, hey, listen, this guy's coming in, he's going to be our bona fide number 1 or number 2. So that makes Mike Evans or, T. Higgins, but you would have to do a sign and trade with him, potentially Pittman Jr. Those are your number one guys. And Ridley can be a number one as well. But if you don't go that route and you do draft a tackle at the 7th position, would you be opposed to them possibly moving up late in the first round, which means they would have to give their 2nd round pick and something else to get, say, a Brian Thomas Jr. or Keon Coleman?
Yeah, see, you're speaking to my spirit now. Keon Coleman, I love watching him play, and I'll put it to you this way: how many 6'4" guys? And D-Mase, you've done it before, so you know the difficulty. How many 6'4" guys are able to go back and successfully return punts? You don't see that movement ability too much and that elusiveness too much out of a guy that's 6'4", but that's what you get in Keon Coleman, and it's always fun to be able to throw the alley-oop. And, as a former Spartan, I'm sure that you were.
I'm trying to figure out how they let him get out of that building. Gosh.
Yeah. I mean, he played ball there, football and basketball there. So, he's a guy I really like. And I believe the Titans are high on him as well. And then you mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. And, that's the fun thing of watching LSU. Right, you get the best of both worlds. You get the catch and run from Malik Neighbors, but then you get that vertical threat that Brian Thomas is. And the thing that's really cool about him is this guy didn't start playing football until he's in 10th grade. So there's still more that you could get out of him, and that's where a Tyke Tolbert could come into play and really get that potential. So, yeah, I mean, I would be all for moving back in there and getting those types of guys because they're premier players, in my opinion.
Let's go back to Marvin Harrison Jr. and the article that was written about him. I think it was on PFF or SI. It might have been SI. About him. And I said this years ago, in regards to Treylon Burks. I said, and a lot of these receivers, not a lot of, let's say a handful of these receivers, that they prepare for the combine so much because it's so ingrained in their mind. I got to test well. I got to do the 3-cone, but they never truly work out for a full NFL season. Do you think if this works with Marvin Harrison Jr. in regards, we know, more than likely his play is going to be outstanding. We know that. But as far as from an injury standpoint, if we don't see him sort of have those nagging hamstrings or don't hit that proverbially rookie wall, then maybe this is the route that other players or receivers will take moving forward, because there's a difference between working out for individual drills, i.e. combine, 40, 3-cone drills, and working out for an NFL season.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's funny you mentioned Treylon Burks because I remember talking to him at the end of the year last year, and that's what he said. He was like, man, I can't wait to just train for football and not this, the stuff that I did. And now you can thank Mike Mamula for that, right? Being the combine champion, and he got drafted higher because of that. And, he ended up going above Warren Sapp. But I think when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., the thing to me that you have to remember is just how much he stood out statistically. Like this dude at Ohio State, was better than Jackson Smith and Jigba. Chris Olave said he's better than him. Garrett Wilson said he was better than him too. So it's like you're getting an outstanding talent. I don't know that if I'm a receiver and I have speed that I wouldn't at least run that 40. And I want teams to see me get in and out of my breaks. And the only guy I could think of, like, you got Calvin Johnson, he ran the 40 of somebody else's shoes. But you look back to 2008, Michael Crabtree, when he came out. And he had done so well statistically, and he was a Blitikoff Award winner. He didn't run because he had that foot injury, and he ended up still getting drafted high. But he didn't get drafted as high as a lot of people thought he would, as far as the top 5. He went 9th, I believe it was, to the 49ers. So I would think that you look at it a little bit differently with a guy like Harrison, who's just clearly on most boards the best receiver here. There's some who have neighbors up there with him, but I don't think that it's something that would be repeated consistently.
TD is with us. Teron Davenport is brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, one thing that we were discussing earlier was one thing that you brought up with Jared on the TD Power Hour last week about how the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds don't have the same kind of depth or talent because players are sticking around longer for NIL. Jim Nagy also touched on that. He said 58 underclassmen this year declared for the draft. 2019, pre-NIL, it was 144, so a massive drop-off there.
Yeah.
Should we start looking at the value of 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks a little bit differently?
Yes and no. I mean, I think because there's less players there, but I mean, you look, once you get past the 5th round, like, you're drafting for traits. So, you know,
which you always
never
have,
know.
kind of.
Yeah, you always have. That's what you always do, but you never know, like, what type of situation will warrant a player, you know, coming out as opposed to going back. So I wouldn't discount those picks. I would still, you know, place a little bit more emphasis on the higher ones, so, you know, the day 1 and day 2 especially, but I wouldn't just, you know, discard them. There's still opportunities to get good players.
So we learned that the Bengals placed the franchise tag on T. Higgins, which I don't think is that great of a surprise. I think we all kind of expected the Bengals to place the franchise tag on T. Higgins, but do you think that he is still a tag and trade candidate? I saw earlier that Zach Taylor said that he's glad that T. Higgins will continue to be a big part of our offense and our team. Do you expect T. Higgins to continue to be a tag and trade candidate, or are the hopes of T. Higgins potentially wearing a Titans uniform going to dwindle?
Yeah, I think the hopes should dwindle, and they've been dwindling for some time now, you know, as these rumors continue to come out. But there's something you have to consider there in Cincinnati, and that's this. You have a huge contract there for Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase is eligible for a new deal. And for what I've heard, he wants a new deal. So you got that monkey that you got to, you know, let me not say it that way. You got that hurdle that you have to consider, right? And then on top of that, are you going to pay Burrow, Jamar Chase a record-breaking contract and a major contract to T. Higgins? I don't know that they'll be able to do that. So I think, you know, there may be some things in play, but then at the same time, do you give up what it takes to trade for a T. Higgins and turn around and sign him to a market-setting contract? I don't know that I do that, and that's what these teams are going to have to consider.
Yeah, they are. But do you think it would be, even though he's eligible for a new contract, meaning Jamar Chase, I think they should sign T. Higgins back. I think they have the best, you know, 1-2 combination. When everyone is healthy, they probably have the best 1-2 combination in the National Football League.
Yeah.
But looking at Chase, maybe they're able to get away with it because Chase wants to see what Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb get in their deals. Because even though Chase may set the market, it's going to be immediately broke by whoever signs first, CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, well, here's the deal, though. If you sign, because T. Higgins is going to want his money if you do a long-term deal.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say, so you look at the tag, it's like, so if they sign him, I think it's like $23 million, and then next year it's going to be like $26 million. So the average is around 25. He's not going to agree to a deal because, you know, that's 2 years, and he's right there at around 25 per. He's not going to agree to a deal that's less than that. So now you sign T. Higgins to a deal that's, you know, 25 to 28, maybe 30 per. That sets the floor for Jamar Chase. So I don't think T. Higgins gets a deal this year. I think he plays on that tag, but then they are going to have to really have some figuring out to do the following year. So it's like, okay, do you want to just have the last dance, you know, Cincinnati version this year, or do you want to, you know, go ahead and see what you could get for him now? And I think that's what it boils down to.
And that's the toughest decision a general manager probably could make. But I look at it and say, look, if we can make this a last dance, let's do it.
I wish we had that problem here in Nashville.
Yeah, what a great problem to have. And not a who the heck is going to be playing receiver for this team coming up this season. TD, enjoy Indianapolis. Looking forward to all of your coverage from the Combine. Tell us about ESPN Bet.
Yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate you all having me on. Definitely make sure you check out ESPN Bet. That's ESPN's live app. It's now in Tennessee, and as the official sports book of ESPN, ESPN Bet is the only place to find daily exclusives and offers with your favorite ESPN personalities and shows. If you sign up today as a new user, you get $100 in bonus bets, and that's for making any sportsbook bet. You have all your favorite markets and bets. You know, you got the in-game wagering, cross-sport parlays, teasers, and all the props that you can handle. This is a good week to do it because you're going to have the combine bets and props too. So that's ESPN Bet. Download today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text TN Redline at 800-889-9789. And as always, terms and conditions apply. See the app for details. I feel like the end of one of those car commercials, man.
You killed it, TD. We appreciate you as always. We'll catch up next week and look forward to catching up more from Indianapolis.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, TD. Teron Davenport, he is the very best. We'll react to what TD had to say there coming up next. Plus, what are deal breakers for us with the Combine? How much does D-Mase look into the Combine, specifically at the receiver position? What can change this upcoming week in Indianapolis? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. How much do you really think that you can take away from the combine? Is it a game changer for you if a player doesn't run a 40 or doesn't do a certain workout this week?
No, it's not really a game changer for me. I mean, obviously, you like to see the guys compete, but, I mean, if they don't, like you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., he has reasons for it. I think really, like, for me, like, from my perspective, I like getting to sit in front of these guys and talk to them and just kind of gauge their love for football. And just, I always like to get, like, how much they know about the game. So, like, I'll throw a random player comp from back in the day, and you know, if they are like, hey, you know what, I remember that guy and I watched him, I kind of get a little thrill out of that. So that's pretty much what it is for me, you know, and also the opportunity to just, you know, talk to a lot of people here and really, you know, talking to the prospects, like gauge their competitiveness. Tell me why you're the best receiver here. Tell me why no quarterback here is better than you. So that's what I get out of it.
That was Teron Davenport. Appreciate TD for stopping by in the last segment. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase for broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. I will ask you that same question, D-Mase. What do you take away from the combine? What are game changers for you, either one way or another?
Obviously, to me, because these guys are so prepped now compared to years prior. And when I say years prior, I'm talking, 10 years ago or 15, 20 years ago, and even longer than that. These individuals are so prepped for it. If you don't come in prepared, that's a red flag for me. That is definitely a red flag. Now, I understand that everybody coming there doesn't have representation. Everybody don't have an agent. But I'm sure that, in going through this process of working out, you're also, learning how to interview, learning certain things from whether guys that had already been through this process that went to your university that you can sort of, pick their brains, or your head coach or position coaches that may have coached in the NFL that, went through this process of interviewing individuals. So to me, especially if you are a projected top 3 rounds or 4 rounds, if you don't come in prepared for every situation, not a situation that is just, you don't know that's going to happen. I'm talking about getting in front of these GMs, learning how to, take your thoughts and put them on a big board, or learning how to dissect defenses or offenses. If you're not prepared, then that's a red flag for me, because you had the time to get prepared, and whoever your representation should have prepared you for this. So that's one for me. You got to be really, to me, the film needs to match what you're showing me as far as workout. I need to be able to look at the film and say, okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at a film, even though every once in a while there may be that the film tells one thing, but then the drills and everything else tells another story. But I want to be able to closely match up what you're doing in these drills to what I see on the field. If it doesn't match up, then that's a red flag to me. It truly is. Yeah. So those are really the 2 things that are red flags for me, is if you don't come in prepared, mentally as well as physical. It may not mean you're going to run your best time. Yeah. But you look in shape. If we ask you to run 10 wind sprints, you could run 10 wind sprints without having to take an hour break. Mm-hmm. You can get back and go. I want to see if you are in condition. I want to know that you know how to conduct yourself in these interviews, because if you don't, that means you're not taking it as seriously as you need to.
Mm-hmm. Is it a game changer for you if players don't run the 40?
No, not at all. Because again, I go back to, I need to see you run the 40 at least once, mm-hmm. whether that be at your own place where you feel comfortable or here at the combine. Everybody's not Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right.
So if you're not Marvin Harrison Jr., then I need to see you run at least once. I have to see you run at least once. I have to see you run those 3 cone drills at least once. Because if I don't, then I am left to watch solely the film. And I want to be able to watch the film, but then I want to be able to see you do these drills. I want to see if you're coachable. If I say, no, this is something, I want to see if you're coachable in it. You know, if I tell you if I ask you to do something, or, hey, it might be better to do this, I want to see if you're coachable and you're able to do it. Or if I explain to run it this way and this is the way we go, and then you get up there and you run it wrong. I'm like, dude, are you paying attention?
Yeah, I just told you
exactly.
what to do.
I just told you what to do. That's how it's going to be in the NFL. I'm going to tell you what to do one time. You get out there, you got one shot to show me you know the offense.
Right.
If you mess up, then you may not get another opportunity. So if I diagram a play in the meetings, you better know it once we go out on the field, because that may be your only shot. So, yeah, it's not a deal breaker as far as the 40, but I need to see you run once. Again, that's either at the combine, and I know there are a handful of guys that that don't want to run the combine because they feel that I need a little bit more. I need to work out a little bit more, really get comfortable. Or some guys, it's just like they feel better working out in their area.
Yeah.
Whether it be at your university or a place they designated for them to work out.
That's an important thing to distinguish. Is when we're talking about players running 40s, we're not just talking about Marvin Harrison Jr.
No.
We're talking about A.D. Mitchell or Keon Coleman or some of these receivers, players at any position that aren't surefire top 5 picks. Like, if Marvin Harrison falls to the Titans at 7 and he doesn't run a 40, I can live with that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. because I know what kind of player he is. But when you're talking about the kind of players that could go late first round, like a Brian Thomas from LSU, late first round, early second, could be really kind of fluid just depending on where players fall and where teams pick. That 40 is invaluable, I have to think, for general managers, because I do think that there's 2 different kind of schools of thought. On one side, it's we need to see you run. We need to see the way you move. We need to be able to have that extra data point to be able to compare you and hundreds of other players that could be in our laps at 38, 42, like whatever, wherever you're picking. But also, how much am I going to learn about you from running in your underwear? And I truly see both sides.
But then it's that, and again, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a different animal. That's just
it's almost like I feel like we have to throw him out.
It's like you just put him out. But I want to see competition. Like, you're competing. Like, this is what it's going to be. When we set you in a meeting room in the NFL, just because you're drafted, say, in the first round, you still got to compete. It ain't your job until you earn that job, until you compete for that job. I want to see how you compete. How are you competing with that kid from, Washington, or that kid from, Oklahoma or Michigan State or Michigan? How are you competing with those guys? Because you're not going to play against one another, because you both play the same position. Let me see how you compete. That's basically what it is. You're competing with the next guy, whether you want to say that or not. If that guy in front of you runs a 4.4, you want to come back and run a 4.3, because you want to top his, or you're looking at everybody's times like, okay, what did that? Okay. Now I know what
I need to do, and I'm going to
absolutely.
get that.
So it's all about competition too. The NFL Combine, to me, outside of the meeting, it breeds competition. It's you and 300 and some other guys, and y'all all whatever position y'all are. There may be 20 wide receivers. Well, just because you are projected a second rounder doesn't mean it's going to happen. You're competing with that other guy that may be projected a 4th rounder. In his mind, he's sizing you up. Like, okay, you're projected to be a second rounder. You ran a 4.5. Let me run a 4.4.
And isn't that what you want?
Exactly. That's what you want.
Dogs,
competition. Yeah.
Dudes who are bleeps with grit,
Absolutely.
as DeMarc Wilson would say.
That's
Absolutely.
the best thing ever.
That level of compete, that level of, just fire in you. I have to be better than the person next to me.
It's all about competition. Because believe me, when I came out in '97, I was watching the guys. I was sizing all those guys up because I knew at the beginning of the year, going back all the way back to the Senior Bowl, all these guys that they had in front of me. So now I got a chance to see them all in this one place. I got to see them run, catch the football, 3-cone drill, all this other stuff. I got to see it firsthand. I'm competing with you. now I want, you projecting this? Okay, let me go out here and show you. So it's all about competition to me.
What was your combine experience like?
It was a blur. It really was. It was truly a blur. But it was a good. It was overwhelming. It was anxiety ridden.
I'm sure. That's a lot. That's a lot of pressure.
And it was
in 1 week.
it was a lot of, it was just, again, I go back, it's competition. You're trying to figure out who your competition is and what they're like, and talking to them and just filling them out, and they're filling you out. So it was just a lot of anxiety, a lot of it was just overstimulation. It was just so much going on. And it's like, man, I wasn't prepared for all of this. Now, you're talking about 1997. I'm like, I wasn't prepared for all of this that's going on. I was just, even, getting up there in front of all these scouts and them measuring your hands and your wingspan. And you just feel like, man, okay, hopefully I measured up good enough,
There's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly.
Your hands are your hands.
Your hands are your hands. But it even though there's nothing you can do about it, it's still
totally
a bunch of just anxiety. And, you run and you're like, oh, okay. Then you talk to your agent afterwards. So what do you think? Did I run fast enough? I got another opportunity to run it at my pro day and something. So it was a lot of anxiety filled. Even the guys that run well, they still want to know, okay, how did they receive me as a player? Did they like me in the meeting rooms? Did I do what they were asking for? Did I answer the question the right way?
And those are questions largely you're probably not going to get the answer
exactly
to. And if you do, it's not going to be for another couple of months. So it is anxiety.
And I remember one guy, and he was a Buffalo Bill scout, and this was during the combine, and we were at the hotel, and he was, it was about 5 or 6 of us, and we were just sitting there talking, and he was giving scouting reports, and he pointed to me. He was like, yeah, the scouting report, you can't catch the ball with your hands. You're not going to be nothing more than, a returner. And I'm thinking like, damn, seriously?
Ruthless.
That's what they
told you
about?
that to your face?
Yeah, he told me that, but he was reading the scouting report, what was coming, guys that really, they saw you, but they didn't see you play. Mm-hmm. They're looking at numbers and they watch some film. And my whole senior year, I dealt with a broken wrist. It happened the first game of the season versus Purdue on a punt return, and I had to wear a cast for 6 weeks. 6 or 7 weeks of the season. So I was playing with a cast or brace on my hand for the first 5 or 6 games of the season. So I'm thinking man, I was catching the ball, but I had to, adjust to how I was catching it because of my wrist, but they didn't say all that. So I had something to prove. And maybe he said that for that reason, because this was before the drill started. This was the night before everything started. So maybe he was telling us all that, listen, y'all need to go out there and y'all need to put in work, because this is what they're thinking. This is what they're saying about you. And it wasn't necessarily, it was just guys that write publications. It wasn't necessarily GMs or stuff like that, but they were giving their scouting report on you as a player. So that's stuff you got to deal with.
Andrew texts in, phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com, says, I assume you're not competitive or you're slower than your competition if you don't run a 40. Although I don't know if that's entirely accurate. I understand the sentiment.
I understand what he's saying because, listen, to me, the combine is you're competing. You're competing with 20 other guys that think they're better than you. So I get that. But, again, I'm not going to say just because you don't work out there, I'm not going to then say, well, you're not competitive.
And if a player doesn't run the 40 outside of a Marvin Harrison Jr., because, again, I don't think that he has anything else to gain. He's still viewed as one of the best prospects in this year's draft. But let's say another receiver who's maybe, a late first round, second or third round pick, if they don't run the 40, my question will be why.
Exactly.
What's wrong? Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing every single thing at your disposal in order to get an edge on these other players, in order to impress scouts? It could be a totally fair reason.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, why not? Why aren't you doing that? So it'll be interesting to see some From news coming out from the NFL Combine, of course, first day of actual working out Thursday. Is that the defensive player? Yes, Thursday is defensive linemen and linebackers, then DBs and tight ends on Friday, followed by quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, and offensive linemen throughout the weekend. We'll have interviews all this week. We'll also hear from Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan tomorrow morning. Brian Callahan will be on our show right at 11 a.m., so we're looking forward to talking with them. Anything in particular that you want to hear from either of those two tomorrow?
My questions, one is going to be about Traylon Burks in the receiver room. I just need to know, and we discussed it earlier. What are your thoughts on Traylon Burks? How do you see? And I know it's early, but how do you see him fitting in this offense as we sit today? Because again, we got to find out whether he is a player or not. This is the year to find out. And so how do you facilitate that? How do you help him, and how does he help himself?
The tough thing is a lot of the questions that I have, that you probably have, that we all have, they're not going to answer.
Yeah, they're not.
We'll ask them.
Well, I'm going to try to get them to answer.
We'll ask them, but they're not going to answer. One thing that I am interested to hear is, overall draft philosophy of a similar question I asked TD. What's a deal breaker for you? What's an absolute no-go? Again, I don't think that they're going to answer it, but I think it will be interesting to see over the weekend. Let's say if a player doesn't run a 40, if Brian Callahan happens to say tomorrow, and I'm speaking in hypotheticals here, hey, I really like it when guys run a 40, and I get iffy about guys that don't run a 40, and if they do take a guy who doesn't run a 40, then what changed your mind about that guy? Just having an understanding of what they look for.
And then also, and so I know we got to quickly get to a break here, I want to see if he believes that these guys are better prepared now than they were 5-10 years ago in regards to going through the process of the NFL draft or the combine. Let's just say the combine.
Yeah.
Are these guys prepared more now than they were then? And if that's so, how do you sort of weed through the BS?
Because I'm sure there's a lot of BS.
Yeah.
A lot of BS.
Yeah.
Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town. It's my personal favorite in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and so much more. Get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company at thegamenashville.com/deals right now while supplies last. I have a quick Predators thought coming up next. The Predators, I said I think they were going to lose one over the weekend, and they did not. I was afraid they were going to zag. They continued to zig, and I know there are some confused Predators fans out there, but I don't think it's that difficult. And we'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Happy Monday out there, everyone, especially our bettors. I'm just playing. I won't say happy Monday to everybody. But listen, I know you did your betting this week, and I know you bet on the Preds, and you won big. But there are other games coming up, and if you're going to be doing your betting, as I know you will be, then you need to do it with our partners in sports. And I'm excited to tell you about the introductory promotion, which they've already launched. It's available to all new customers in Tennessee. It's the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports has launched their VIP program for the premier batters of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up. The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sportsbook, and I mean no other sportsbook, will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for, people? Get going and download their app today at zensports.com. ZenSports.com. That's Zen Sports. Betting just got better. And always remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to play here in Tennessee.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063, The Game and The Game Nashville app. Just a quick programming note. Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan will both address the media tomorrow morning in the 9 o'clock hour, but we will start off our show tomorrow right at 11 o'clock with Brian Callahan. He will join our show live from Indianapolis, so make sure you're tuning in right here on 1025 and 1063. The Game starting at 11 a.m. And, of course, throughout the entire morning, we'll have our fabulous morning programming. I did have a quick Predators thought before we go. The Predators won both of their games over the weekend, took down the San Jose Sharks on Saturday, and then Anaheim Ducks in Anaheim 4-2 on Sunday. So they have been red freaking hot on this road trip. The Predators have done what we've kind of said is the formula to winning. You're getting great goaltending, and you're getting scoring from up and down the roster. You're getting that secondary scoring, that it's not just the Philip Forsbergs and the Ryan O'Reillys that are carrying you to victory. Like, you're looking really good in some of these games. And Saturday night, I don't think that it was the Predators' best brand of hockey, but they still found a way to win. So they remain undefeated on this road trip, and they've played really well. That whatever happened after the Dallas game, whether it was getting embarrassed by the Dallas Stars or the kick in the butt that they needed from canceling the concert, whatever it was, it worked. But I heard Adam in Portland, and we love Adam in Portland. He called into Robbie and Rexford this morning, and he's like, look, I'm a confused Predators fan. I thought I wanted the team to sell, but then they've won a lot of games, so now I don't know. Should we be buyers? I don't know what to do at the deadline. And, of course, I'm paraphrasing Adam in Portland's call. But the gist of it was, I don't know what the Preds should do now. I don't know what I want this team to do. I say, keep it simple. Don't let these games cloud your judgment of what you think this team should do. Yes, the past 5 games have been fun and they've looked great, but the overall goal of this hockey club is to win a Stanley Cup, and it's not going to happen this year. If you make the playoffs this year, will it be a blast? Absolutely, because the playoffs are fun and Bridgestone Arena would be rocking. You're not going to win a Stanley Cup this year. That the goal should continue to be over the next 3 seasons, 5 seasons, 10 seasons, building a Stanley Cup contending team. You're not there. Is Alexander Carrier or Yakov Trenin going to be the difference between your team winning a Stanley Cup and not winning a Stanley Cup? Like, are those players long-term solutions for this team? I do not think so. I don't think so. So selling those players off at the deadline, if you have a trade partner and you get a good enough return, do it. Continue to do that. My mind is not changed about this team needing to be sellers at the deadline. What that looks like, who you're going to sell off, well, we'll let the market decide that. But Barry Trotz very much so should still be picking up phone calls. My mind is not changed, and I don't think Barry Trotz should be either.
Well, it shouldn't change. And listen, this team has been on a heater, not just from a winning standpoint, but they've averaged, 4 goals per game in the last 5. Now they got Ottawa coming up here. But this was a stretch of, I think, of the season right before the trade deadline that was going to be critical. It was a winnable sort of stretch, and they have taken care of business. And they're getting secondary scoring. Their lead dogs are scoring as well. But I think what is putting them over is they're getting secondary scoring. Their play inside the net is much better than what it has been prior to these 5 games. So, to me, I'm with you. Just if you're going to make moves, try to make this team better for the future, not just for this year. Because I think if they continue to play the way they have been playing, they will make the playoffs. But the playoffs is not the all be all. You want to be in a position to win a Stanley Cup, and you do that by acquiring talent that's going to help you now, but in the future as well.
Winning is fun, playoffs are fun, and you can still make the playoffs if you decide to be a seller, but don't let this year's playoffs distract you from the end goal.
No.
And that's not this season. That's going to do it for us today. Brian Callahan right at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Stillman & Company's up next.
Be love and love on your people. Peace.